was like, Mom, I have this like lump on my neck. What do you think this is? And she was like, oh, I don't know. It could be your lymph nodes. It's like, sure, absolutely, probably nothing. I forget about it. It had never even crossed my mind to like seek medical attention for it. No, of course not. Like, of course that it's not cancer. You don't have cancer. Like, because that seems so like far out. It would never be you. Even if it's thyroid cancer, like what on earth does that treatment process look like? I just like laid in bed and just cried. And just cried and cried and cried. I had just finished my first semester of college, so I came to the University of Colorado Boulder starting spring semester of my freshman year. I was driving back out for the beginning of my sophomore year with my mom. I had just gotten my first car on my own. It was a truck. I was so excited. And we were driving from Virginia out to Colorado together, which is a 24-hour drive. I'm sitting in the passenger seat and I'm just, just like sitting there, and I put my hand on my neck and I was like, oh, what's that? And I felt like a little bit of a lump and I was like, that's weird. I had never had any health issues before in my life. No allergies, no nothing, no procedures, like clean as a slate. I was like, that's weird. And I was like, Mom, I have this like lump on my neck. What do you think this is? And she was like, oh, I don't know. It could be your lymph nodes. You're getting over a little cold. Like, things happen. Like, just keep an eye on it and it's probably nothing. I was like, sure, absolutely, probably nothing. I forget about it. I'm like, yeah, nothing. I'm back in Boulder, living the life. And a month later, I was driving up in Boulder up to a hike with my boyfriend, and I was in the car. And I put my hand on my neck, and I realized that it's still there. And I was like, that's weird. I was like, I was in the car with my mom driving out when we were coming out here, and I felt this lump on my neck, and it's still there. It's been like a month and a half. And he was like, please go to the doctor. And I was like, no, it's nothing. It's fine. Like, I'm probably just a little swollen, whatever. And he was like, Jess, we have like an on-campus doctor. Like, just make an appointment, go and have them tell you it's nothing. I don't even come from like a medically complicated family. Like, I never personally knew anybody who had cancer. And so, I feel this thing on my neck, and it had never even crossed my mind to like seek medical attention for it. Like, bumps, bruises, whatever, like I'm a very clumsy person. Not that like I would get a bruise on my neck, but you kind of feel it. And of course, like truthfully, when I felt it in the car with my mom for the first time, I was like, cancer. You hear about like people getting lumps on their body and like that's what it is. And of course, like everything in me is like, no, of course not. Like, of course that it's not cancer. You don't have cancer. Like, because that seems so like far out and like it would never be you. You can't just let yourself spiral into oblivion. I like really think that like optimism about like every step in your process, as long as you can possibly have it, is one of the most valuable tools that you can have when going through something like this. Now, I wouldn't say neglect. I definitely was neglectful at first when I was like, oh, it's nothing. So I made this appointment to go see my on-campus doctor. I had never been before. I didn't have to go anytime in my first semester. And I went and I booked this appointment and I went in and they did my like vitals. And they're like, your heart rate is really high. Your heart rate's like 115 sitting here. So he's like, I'm gonna be honest with you. He was like, we think that you may have a blood clot. And I was like, okay. And he was like, and there's this blood test that we do called a D-dimer, where we give it to you, and then when the results come back, it tells us whether or not you have a blood clot. I said, okay, and then what happens after that? He said, well, then we put you in an ambulance and we take you to the hospital because you are like imminent to having a heart attack. And I get a notification and they're like, you don't have a blood clot, but we have scheduled you an emergency follow-up appointment with us for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I'm like, okay, interesting. I come back in the next morning and he's like, you are super hyperthyroid. Like, your thyroid is just working the max, like going nuts. And I'm like, great, what's a thyroid? What do you, I don't even know what that means. Like, no idea. So he starts explaining it to me, whatever, and he was like, so I have to tell you something. He was like, when you're super hyperthyroid like this, hyperthyroidism is either autoimmune or viral. And he was like, and you're not sick right now. So he was like, one thing leads to another, and I believe that you have Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disease. And I'm like, hello, 19. Here I am in Colorado on my own, and now I have, an autoimmune disease? Like, that's not me. I go up to my endocrinologist, and he's like, okay, I did some, initial blood work, and he's like, you definitely have Graves' disease and hyperthyroidism. And he's like, but I have to tell you that, like, a symptom of that is not lumps on your neck. He was like, I don't have anything else to give you besides, like, we need to get you an ultrasound, like, now. So he schedules my ultrasound in Boulder probably a day or two later. I go into the ultrasound place, and the lady that I'm with, my ultrasound tech, is as nice as she could possibly be. And she's doing my ultrasound, she's going around my neck, she's on this side, and she's like, the screen is right there. It's not like you're facing away from it or anything, you're looking up at that person and you're watching all their facial expressions. She's on this side, and I'm just, like, obviously freaked out again. Like, I'm like, I hate this, why am I here? Who is this? Who am I? She's like, these are your lymph nodes over here, and she goes to the middle, and she's like, here's your throat, here's your thyroid, whatever. Goes over to this side, and it's all, like, these massive white lumps. And she goes completely silent. And I just start, like, welling up with tears, and I'm like, whoa, well, if those were my lymph nodes, what's that? And she was like, I'm really sorry, like, I am just an ultrasound tech, and I can't say anything further. Okay, WebMD is gonna be hearing from me in about 5 minutes. So I leave, I go out to my car, and I pull out my phone, and I look up cancer cells on an ultrasound, on a thyroid ultrasound. And what comes up looks exactly like what I had just seen on the screen. And I just, like, lose it. Like, I am sobbing hysterically. I can't even get words out. Obviously, like, I'm calling my parents, like, and everybody is doing the perfectly reasonable and right thing and saying, you cannot tell yourself you have cancer from a Google search. And I'm like, I know what I saw, and I'm not trying to convince them, but I'm just like, you just have to, the look on her face, what my endocrinologist said, like, what I saw online, like, you just have to believe me. And truthfully, that moment, I think, prepared me so much better for what the rest of my journey was going to look like, because I didn't have to hear it as, like, a bomb drop from a phone call from somebody or sitting in a room by myself with a doctor. I think I kind of processed it all in that moment and came to that conclusion on my own, which I am so grateful for. At 5 p.m. on Monday, finally my doctor called me, I think even from his personal phone, and was like, okay, apparently you won't leave my staff alone. And I was like, no, I won't. And he went down the whole list of everything that he thought with me, and he was like, I have to tell you that, like, my first thought is that I think you have lymphoma. And I was like, oh. And he was like, which we're gonna have to get into in, like, depth if that's true. And he was like, backup option, I think it could be thyroid cancer. He was like, which cancer is cancer. It is a horrible disease. Everybody struggles with it. But he was like, but the difference in your treatment plan between lymphoma and thyroid cancer is, like, night and day. So we got to get this figured out, like, now. He was like, so call around. Here's, like, 5 hospitals I recommend. See if one of them can get you in for a biopsy. None of these hospitals can get me in for a biopsy until February. So I call my parents, and my parents are like, yeah, no. We live on the East Coast. You're coming back here, and we're going to get this figured out sooner rather than later. So they call, like, our local hospital, like, I think the hospital that I was born at, and they're able to get me in for a biopsy, like, 2 weeks later. Right before I had gotten that biopsy, my parents had gotten me set up with their primary care physician in Richmond, just so that I had, like, a contact here. And she had actually beat lymphoma the year before and had gone through chemo and had gone through all the things. And they were like, we just want you to talk to her. And of course, I was still in this, like, I don't have cancer, okay? Like, I don't need to be talking to cancer survivors and doing the cancer thing and whatever. And I met her, and her name is Dr. Kara Foster Weiss, and she is sent from God and heaven, literally. Like, I think she is one of the most spectacular people I've ever met. She was the first person during this whole process to be like, hey girl, I get that you don't want to have cancer, but we're here and we got to get this done. And look at me, like, I'm here, I'm working, I have a family, like, I live my life, and, like, I also went through this. And one of the things that was, like, a symptom that I hadn't even realized was I, like, got on the scale when I did my initial take-in with her, and I had lost 35 pounds. And I just remember, like, sitting in bed, and it feels like that same like anxiety almost as, like, the night before Christmas when you can't sleep and you just, like, know something big is coming tomorrow, or, like, the night before a huge exam, and, like, you know that, like, what comes out of the next day is just gonna alter everything. The biopsy doctor who's there to do it walks in, and my parents are in there, and he's my aunt and uncle's next door neighbor, and they came back and they were able to get it done that afternoon. He called my parents and he told them that the biopsy came back and it was thyroid cancer, which was just, like, To say it was a relief, it's an interesting choice of words. So my parents belong to a country club in Richmond, and we thankfully have a very, very close friend to our family who has donated millions of dollars to City of Hope in LA. And my dad was just casually having the conversation with him. Like, I try even not to think too much about what my parents were going through this whole process, because it would just bring me to shambles to think about your kid and like trying to think about what it means when your kid gets diagnosed with cancer. But I just remember my dad said that he was talking to a group of his friends and he was like, we don't really know what to do. We have no experience with this. Like, we don't even really know what next steps looks like. And this friend of our family was like, I love Jessica. Like, let me call everyone I can at City of Hope and let me get in contact with somebody. So we were thankfully able to get on like a FaceTime call with an oncologist at City of Hope, who we just like talked through everything. He explained all the steps that could be done. We like sent over my scans to him, and he was like, thankfully the best person that I have ever trained from my time at Duke is Dr. David Shonka at University of Virginia. And we were like, well, thankfully UVA is an hour up the road from us. When I'm back from winter break, I meet with Dr. Shonka, and he's like, perfect. I looked over all your stuff. He's like, I think we're going to do a total thyroidectomy, and we're going to take out some lymph nodes. We're definitely going to take out like the swollen, affected one. We schedule it. I remember sitting around having like a big family dinner the week before with my family and being like, how long do you think this is going to be? Like, how long do you think a surgery like this takes? And my dad's like, oh, super routine thyroidectomy. Like, they just take it out. It's like an hour and a half. And like, sure, I think that like could be true. We go in for the day of. My dad's like, so Dr. Shonka, like, how long do you think it's going to be? He's like, 6 or 7 hours. And they're like, okay, here we go. So we go. I do my surgery. I mean, I don't remember it, but I heard it was a really long time and a really stressful 6 or 7 hours. If you can't tell, I'm like super social, will talk to anybody. So I'm doing all my intake. I'm just like bonding with all the nurses. UVA, like, I genuinely got the best care of my entire life there. I could not imagine being anywhere else. I woke up and I remember I just like, you never know what to expect. You're like, what is going on? So I wake up and I had the like tube coming out of my neck, and I was like, wow, like, this is a lot. Everything went great. They were like, we got it all out, or got as much as we could see out, and they're like, we took out 59 lymph nodes out of your neck. I was cut all the way. Only this part of my scar is the only one that like didn't heal great, but I was cut all the way to back here. So I went, had my whole normal spring semester, and then it was radioactive iodine time. We were scheduling it, and I was going to have it for the end of May of 2024, and of course, then we get on to the iodine-free diet. And I go and I do my radioactive iodine. I was stuck in this room right here for 5 days. The constant medication, that was probably another one of the like biggest mental barriers for me to overcome. I think it was like after the radioactive iodine when I realized that like I finished that and they're like, you had great uptake. And then I kind of had a moment of like, great, I beat this. Like, it's over. And then it was like, great, so we'll see you back in 3 months. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, and I just kind of remember like going out and just like kind of crying to myself and being like, I thought this was it. And the answer is that like, it's not, and it's never going to be. And that was something that I really had to swallow and to understand that like, this is the rest of my life. Like, you don't get cancer at 19 and then like beat it and it's over. And my mom thankfully just talked me through it so well and was like, Jess, eventually you reach a point where everybody's getting scans every year. And like, when you're my age, like, you get scans all the time and they're always checking for something. And she was like, just think about it, that like the next time something comes up, because it will in your life, you will have another health issue in your life. Like, everyone does. She's like, they will catch it so fast. There's not another time that you will just be sitting around and something will be wrong in your body and you will just sit around and not know what to do about it. You will have so many doctors around you, and you will have an endocrinologist doing your blood work every 6 months for the rest of your life, checking your levels. And when you want to have kids, you will have so much monitoring when you go through all of that. And she was like, and is it daunting and scary? Yes. But is it also to prevent you from having to go through anything like this again? Yes. And now, thankfully, like I said, like, I love my care team so deeply. My endocrinologist out in Colorado has been spectacular through this whole process. That's Dr. Bridenstine of UC Health. and Dr. Shonka at UVA. Like, I look forward to going to see them. Do I look forward to the process and the blood work and the ultrasounds? Like, no. But they have always let me ask every single question that I possibly have. They will sit in there for as long as I possibly need. I can ask all my stupid questions, all my completely out of the blue questions. They will answer them with like the utmost clarity. Or if they say, I don't know, they will say, I don't know, and I will research this and I will call you back with the answer, and they do. Do I think about it? Yes. When I go in for my scan days, am I super worried that they're going to find something and I'm going to have that same experience with the ultrasound tech where she goes silent because something new has come up? Yes, absolutely. But the fact that I'm able to have the peace in my day-to-day of knowing that my doctors are comfortable enough with where I'm at, that I can go about living my quote-unquote normal life with a daily pill, gives me so much peace. Truly. And I'm not 5 years out yet, so I'm not the like no evidence of disease or anything. But just the positivity that my doctors have in me and the faith that I have in my doctors really provides so much peace in knowing that like cancer is the club that nobody wants to be a part of. But there are so many like medical resources out there for, again, like the people who have the privilege to have them. Like, it made me realize my privilege so deeply. Having the understanding, like, cancer is so scary to me, and was my entire diagnosis process was so scary. And I think everybody around me saw how blinding and confusing it was, that like thankfully I have never come across somebody who tried to diminish my experience in any way. Anyone who knows me at all knows how daunting this process was to me. And I think even just having a little bit of that self-reflection of like, I am so thankful that my actual treatment story of needing to be under and needing to have radioactive iodine and all of this was contained to a 365-day period. That like I was able and privileged enough to like boom, 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 get it done. There was no waiting, there was no hesitation. It was over, and now it's monitoring, and like, will things come up? Absolutely. And like, is there the constant changing of my medication and trying to find the right levels? Yes, but because there are so many people who cannot get access to this healthcare and who will struggle with this so much more severely for the rest of their lives because they were not able to get the level of care that I did. And so just all of the blessings that I was given in that 365-day time period that allows me to move forward with such peace and comfort in my journey and trust in my doctors, it means the entire world to me, and it helps me be able to continue on as I do.